Looking for these better days.
It is Wednesday, March 18th. I'm Scott Seidenberg. Here's what you need to know to make today a better day. Venezuela on top of the baseball world after a 3-2 win over the United States, winning the World Baseball Classic. The NCAA tournament officially underway with the playing of the first four. We'll be joined by AJ Hoffman a little bit later on in this pod to get his bracket breakdown. Mackenzie Rivers joins me on this episode of Better Day, presented by FanDuel. And Mackenzie, the United States trailing 2-0, gets the moment of all moments last night with Bryce Harper.
Bottom of the ninth or the eighth, whatever.
Bottom of the eighth. Bryce Harper, 2-run home run, massive 432-foot shot. But it was overshadowed and all for naught after Gino Suarez's double in the top of the ninth inning gave Venezuela back the lead. They go on to defeat the United States 3-2. Now, a lot of people last night on social media wondering, why in the world was Mason Miller, the closer of closers, the flame-throwing closer, now for the Padres, formerly of the A's, why was he not in the game for Team USA? Well, we talked about this on yesterday's pod, that there was some speculation about his availability. Well, Mark DeRosa, the United States manager, basically confirmed what Ken Rosenthal from Fox Sports had reported earlier in the game, was that Mason Miller was only available in a save situation. And he said if we took the lead in the bottom of the eighth, Mason Miller was going to come in to close out the game in the top of the ninth. But because it was a tie game, we went to Garrett Whitlock. This is the thing, so this is the thing that bothers me, okay? And I'm sure it bothers a lot of baseball fans, that people that were rooting for the U.S., people that bet on the U.S., all that stuff. Once it's tied going into the top of the ninth, because you're the home team, there's no longer the possibility for a save situation. Why isn't Mason Miller pitching the top of the ninth?
It's normal extra innings, right? They don't call a draw and come back the next day. Nothing like that.
Correct. So if he was available to get you 3 outs, if you had a lead in a save situation, and you said, and after the game, Mark DeRosa said, I was honoring what the Padres told us. The Padres said he's only available in a save situation. But it's a tie game and you're the home team in the ninth inning. There is no more save situation. So if he can give you 3 outs, if you had the lead, he would come in the game. Just because you're tied doesn't mean he can't still come in the game. Now, I understand, like you weren't going to bring him in a tie game in the 8th inning, right? You're not going to bring him in a tie game in the 7th inning. But in the 9th inning, like, the better excuse would have been, okay, from Mark DeRosa, that, hey, we were holding him for the 10th inning. If it was still tied after 9, we would have gone to him for the 10th. But I would like to honor the Padres' request and not use him if I didn't have to use him or something like that. But for him to say that, like, oh, we would have brought him in if it was a save situation. I love the reporter's follow-up, by the way, because the reporter in the post-game press conference was like, yeah, but there was no save situation, and once it's tied in the top of the ninth, and he was just like, yeah, we're honoring what the Padres requested. I will go out on a limb, and I will say Mark DeRosa is not getting hired to be a major league manager anytime soon.
Shots fired. I mean, you only know for fact that there are 3 outs that you're going to have, and you may need more. But at that point, game theory says you got to use it or lose it. You don't get credit for timeouts in the bank. But I mean, the story of this game is Aaron Judge. How do you go 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts? You're getting too many of these in World Series situations and ALCS situations. I'm disappointed in Aaron Judge. Because you're on that pantheon, and it's like freaking I don't even know his name because he hasn't won anything. The guy from Edmonton,
Connor
the
McDavid.
hockey player.
Yeah,
Connor. What is he come up once in a final? If you're anything, Andres Iniesta did, Pele did. Come on.
I mean, Connor McDavid did win the Conn Smythe Award as the playoffs' most valuable player, and helped.
Yeah, so did Jerry West.
He helped the
Jerry
Edmonton
West was
Oilers
mad
come
about
back
it,
from
and he
3 games to none down to force a Game 7. They just happened to lose that Game 7. But look, Mackenzie, your point is well taken, though, because Aaron Judge has been the greatest hitter of the past several years, him and Shohei Ohtani, but yet there's memories of Aaron Judge not coming through in the clutch situations. And all I'll say to that is, you're not until you finally do it, it's always going to hang over your head. Alex Rodriguez, people forget, in 2004 when the Yankees blew that series to the Red Sox.
Was that his first year there, or is his second year?
That was his first year. He was the MVP.
That's crazy.
People forget, because the Yankees blew that lead to the Red Sox, a moment that I actually refuse to acknowledge ever happened, despite the amount of documentaries that have come out about it. I don't acknowledge that ever happening. But people forget that prior to Game 4 of the World Series, Alex Rodriguez was putting together one of the all-time great postseason runs in baseball. Like, he was incredible in that postseason.
And nobody remembered that in 2007 and 2008.
Exactly. But all they remembered was the times that he came up short every other year for the Yankees until 2009, when he had a big hit to tie the game and the Yankees win the World Series, right? But before that, it was, this guy can never come through in the clutch, right? Same thing with Peyton Manning. It was always the difference between Peyton Manning and Tom Brady was always that Peyton Manning failed in the postseason when the moment was the biggest. Until he got over that hump and finally won a Super Bowl with the Colts, then people stopped saying that. So I think here's the negativity thing. Is going to surround Judge until he finally comes through in the clutch.
Until he finally wins one, it'll be maybe the first paragraph of when we think of Aaron Judge. But even if he does win one, and and Alex Rodriguez did win one, Peyton Manning won two, we still don't talk about Peyton Manning like he's Tom Brady, because it's not just that he only won 2 championships, is that he was like 14-14 in the playoffs. Like, you have to be better than what, at least as good or close to as good, the great player that we expect you to be in that different level. Clayton Kershaw isn't in that level. Madison Bumgarner wasn't good enough, like, in the regular season to be in that level.
Yeah.
But yes, he's young. What is he, 30, 35?
So
big difference.
So Judge is 33 years old.
Okay, right in the middle.
Or 34 right now. So this is Judge's career numbers in the regular season. Okay, regular season career numbers, 10 years in Major League Baseball. Okay, he has a career batting average of 294, a career OPS of 1.028, and a career slugging of 615.
That's all really good.
Yeah, I know. In his postseason career, 8 years in the postseason, he has a career batting average 236, career slugging, a career OPS, of 822, and a career slugging of 476.
All right, that's slugging and OPS is above league average, but it's
nowhere near his regular season career averages, and that's the thing. Like, when I used to work for Max,
he was
Kellerman,
the favorite to win the MVP heading into this game.
Yeah, when I used to work for Max Kellerman back in the day, he used to have this this standard of grading players. Right,
there was Andre Iguodala, number one.
No. He used to talk about how there was different standards for players from regular season to postseason, right? There was the player, and he called it the Derek Jeter, where you are exactly the same in the regular season as you are in the postseason. Like, literally, Derek Jeter's numbers are identical from the regular season to the postseason. The moment never got too big, it never got too little. He was just the model of consistency. Then there was the player that takes a drastic jump in the postseason, and that was your Eli Manning. Eli Manning was an average to meh quarterback in his career in the regular season, but in the playoffs, he's a freaking Hall of Famer. Not yet, but you understand. Like, he put up incredible numbers in the playoffs.
I think he still has the most or second most road playoff wins. Maybe he's second behind Tom Brady now.
And two Super Bowl MVPs, right? And then there was the player where you could have said it was A-Rod. There was a time when it was Peyton Manning. Now maybe it's Aaron Judge, where they're so great in the regular season, but there's a drop-off in the playoffs.
It makes it like, same with Clayton Kershaw. Like, people are like, why are you hating? He has a 5 ERA in the playoffs. A lot of people do. It's like, he's so good that you want to mention him in the first paragraph that defines this era, but that means you have to have an asterisk there.
And so
if you want to put him in that category.
it's going to follow Judge, unfortunately, until he comes through. And listen, was last night on Aaron Judge? No, but when you are the greatest hitter on your team, you can't go 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts in the championship game. You just can't. And Bryce Harper had the big moment, and that was awesome. But, hey, Judge, how about you follow up and go back-to-back and belly-to-belly, and the U.S. wins this game, right? So,
Would've been cool.
Congratulations to Venezuela for winning the World Baseball Classic. They are on top of the baseball world.
We're not a political show, of course, and you can cut this, but just put yourself in the mind of an average. You're a bartender in whatever the capital of Venezuela is.
Is it Caracas?
I think it might be Caracas.
Did I just make that up? No, right. It is Caracas, right?
Great job out of you. I should know.
By the way, I am oddly good at geography. For some reason, I know every state capital by heart. And
Montpelier too?
Montpelier is Vermont, yes. And I could pull it up very quick recall. And when you just said capital of Venezuela, I'm like, it's Caracas. Where did I pull Caracas from?
I know, right? It sounds like a place that's a capital.
It's just weird. It's in there.
You're a bartender in Caracas.
Yeah.
And someone gives you a proposition 6 months ago. All right, Maduro, your president, he's not going to be there anymore. But you could win the World Baseball Championship. I don't think that's a hard decision. I think they're having a good spring in Venezuela. This must be nice. I mean, to beat the world, to beat America, what a win for them. You got to be happy for them.
Yeah, congratulations to Team Venezuela. Congratulations to Michael Garcia, who wins the Most Valuable Player Award. What about the odds on that, Mackenzie? I mean, I don't even remember seeing that.
We didn't discuss him. I did not see him on the board. Yeah.
We did not discuss Michael Garcia winning the World Baseball Classic MVP. So congratulations to him there. So that was the biggest story in sports and baseball yesterday. In college basketball, the NCAA tournament began also. The NIT tipped off last night. Mackenzie, coming up in a couple of minutes, we're going to be joined by AJ Hoffman to get his preview of the brackets. We'll get his best bets for the first round games and also his take on who he has representing each region and who eventually will cut down the nets.
College basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every night. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into bigger wins. With the College Basketball Parlay Profit Boost, here's how it works. Build any college hoops parlay you like. The early tip, the rivalry game, the ranked matchup, the late night West Coast shootout, mixed spreads, totals, props, whatever fits your read of the slate. Then just apply your Profit Boost and instantly bump up that potential payout. Go safe, go spicy, go with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style. Now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com/believe to get started. FanDuel, play your game. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with the Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. Opt-in required. Minimum 2-leg parlay required. Bonus issued as a non-withdrawable Boost Builder tokens. Restrictions apply, including any token expiration and max wager amounts. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-MY-RESET. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. For Louisiana, call 1-877-770-7867.
Last night in the first four, we had high drama as Howard outlasted UMBC 86-83 to advance to be the 16th seed in the Midwest region, and in the 11th seed matchup in the West region, Texas getting a shot with about 1 second remaining to get past NC State 68-66. So two great finishes in the first four. One game shoots way over the total. Another game goes well under. So, and both same thing. First halves, we had one over and one under. And so that's where we are for the start here of the NCAA tournament. Here's your 2 games on the schedule for tonight. The 16th seed matchup in the South region, Prairie View A&M against Lehigh, where Lehigh up on FanDuel is a 3.5-point favorite. And then Miami of Ohio, Mackenzie, 31-1 on the season, takes on SMU for the right to be the 11th seed in the Midwest region. Now, this spread has moved significantly. At times, it was up north of 7, north of 8. Now it is SMU minus 6.5. A couple of things I want to ask you. Is the market not respecting Miami of Ohio's 31-1 record enough? And
well, the last 24 hours they have been.
And is the market, Mackenzie, not respecting Miami to Dayton? Because this,
what do you mean? You got to go through Tennessee. You got to
no.
Georgia?
I'm talking about Miami University, which is in Oxford, Ohio. I think I might have just made that up.
4 different colleges there. Okay, go ahead.
I might have just made that up, like I made up Caracas.
No, it is in Oxford, which is the funniest thing in the world.
So, Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, is an hour away from Dayton. So, this is a home game for Miami of Ohio tonight in Dayton Arena.
It's got to be their favorite team ever. They're supposed to go one and done.
Is this not like, is the market not acknowledging that this is a home game for Miami of Ohio?
Well, let's check KenPom. KenPom says it should be a 7-point line. So the fact that it opened 9 and now it moved to 6.5, I guess the market. Yeah, I guess that's just what it should be. I guess if the market's not maybe a 0.5 point factor for being close to home and everything you're saying, it's not much.
I think that the home court means something. I really do. I think the fans mean something. I think that this. I think you lost the best of the number because you could have had much higher. But I feel
we love a team on a streak that loses a game to get right back on the horse.
Yes. I feel like Miami of Ohio is the play here.
Because it's such a release to finally lose. Like, honestly, it is. Like, I mean, it's a lot of pressure every game. Now they're going to play for fun. Like, they could lose in the first round.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure off Miami of Ohio.
And SMU is just, like, not good. I mean, they're
Larry
really
Brown, he really has gone downhill since it's just not the same coach anymore.
They're just not good. All right, so that is the first 4 games. Again, we had 1 over and 1 under last night. In the NIT, which we had looked at the stats the past couple of seasons, 60% to the over. But last night, not to be the case. I believe it was 3-5 or 5-3 to the under last night. Let's double check that. We had 2 and 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nope, 3 and 5. I was correct. We were 3 and 5 to the over last night in the 8 games in the NIT. So we'll see if that changes here tonight and we get more overs with the 8 games on your schedule. Navy against Wake Forest. Wake Forest, a 12.5-point favorite. Kent State against Illinois State. Illinois State, a 6.5-point favorite. George Washington, Utah Valley. Utah Valley, 2.5-point favorites. Dayton, not playing in their home arena, at Bradley. Dayton minus 1.5 on the road. Sam Houston at New Mexico. New Mexico, 11.5-point favorites. Murray State at Nevada. Nevada, 8.5-point favorites. St. Joe's at Colorado State. Colorado State, 5.5-point favorites. And UIC at Cal, a 5.5-point favorite. Before we get to AJ Hoffman and his college basketball NCAA tournament breakdown, Mackenzie Rivers, let's take a look at the NBA schedule for tonight. Last night, the Tankapalooza parlay came through as we gave it out. Well, we didn't give it out officially, but we said if you wanted to have fun, you could do it. It was minus 177, but there was no shockers last night. All the tanking teams lost, as they should. So if you bet the Knicks, even without Brunson, they win. Cavs took care of the Bucks. You know, you had the Spurs took care of the Kings, the Pistons over the Wizards. No drama there.
And I got a fan comment that said you originally said not to include this team in the parlay, and then you included the team in the parlay at the wrap up yesterday. Well, it wasn't a parlay that we gave out. It was just a suggestion of
a trend.
Yes. that we're seeing in the NBA. And here's the thing. I've been thinking more and more about this. This is not an anomaly. This is not like tanking teams are doing worse than usual. There is a memo. Tanking will end one way or the other. Adam Silver is going to change the system quickly, maybe even as soon as next year. That means tanking is incredibly incentivized this year. And I think we roll this over. I think you put in a couple tickets in all these favorites, or at least 4 or 5, and see if we can string some things together.
Okay, so let's take a look at the schedule tonight and put together a tanking parlay. Let's go with the Blazers over the Pacers. Right now, Blazers up on FanDuel, 10.5-point favorites. Your second leg here will be the Timberwolves over the Jazz. Minnesota, a 12.5-point favorite. Let's see. Might as well go with the what's the other tanking team here?
Now, New Orleans is not a tanking team. They do not have any control of their draft pick, so they'll be trying to win.
Thunder over the Nets, right?
Yes, sir. Yep,
OKC, a 19-point favorite. Those three teams are minus 223 on the tanking parlay. If you want to throw the Boston Celtics
obviously
in
all
there,
money line. Yep, I was going to say that. I mean, that's just not it's not the same theory, but they're also going to win that game. So
yeah,
go ahead.
That's minus 147 on the 4-leg parlay. Do you add the Denver Nuggets?
No. Yeah, you know what? You do. Because
13.5-point favorites over the Grizzlies.
Money line, they might struggle in Memphis, but they're not going to lose that game. And Memphis, more importantly, is not going to win that game. So where are we at? We throw the Celtics and the Grizzlies on there.
Minus 117 up on FanDuel.
All right, what if we took the Celtics out?
If you take the Celtics out, minus 166.
All right, so the pure tanking parlay, which I would recommend at minus 166, is without the Celtics, but I'm going to bet the Celtics tomorrow, so have fun.
All right, so there's
minus 117.
Let's talk about one game that we kind of talked about the other day that is very intriguing here, and that is the rematch between the Lakers and the Rockets. It is the immediate revenge spot, same site, just a day break in between these games. The Lakers are also staring in the face of playing a back-to-back because tomorrow they are in Miami to take on the Heat. Right now up on FanDuel, the Rockets, a 2.5-point favorite over the Lakers.
Absolutely no line adjustment. This was 2.5, moved to 2, but was essentially in this exact same spot. The data says the Rockets are the play. Logically, it makes sense the Rockets are the play, and the first quarter especially, if you can get a minus 120 on the money line, it just historically comes through. And I think it's a good example of why the Rockets need this game more. I mean, they're all bunched up in the 3 to 6 range in the West. The Rockets got to win some of these.
Well, let's look up the numbers, Mackenzie. So we'll go in the database and we'll say that, your previous was a loss against the same team and you're playing the same site, right? You're playing at home. Now, it's important that you have to specify in the database that this is not a playoff game because obviously playoff series, you can have game 1 and 2 or game 3 and 4, whatever it is. So here's what I found. Since the start of the 2021 season, and the Rockets do fit this, they lost that first game. In the second game, 37-48 straight up. That's not great. ATS 45-40, so that's good. But obviously,
so let's see if we can do better.
But obviously, that matters. Like if these teams are dogs, right? Because you have a bad straight up record, but a good ATS record, so that's probably obviously their favorite tonight. But here's what's interesting: if you isolate the first quarter, the Rockets in this situation, the home teams here. 60.5% straight up, 46-30-9, 48-31-4. That's 60.8% ATS in the first quarter. I think the play tonight.
One of the most interesting things about the NBA, you can't simulate aggression, and part of making your shot is being cool, calm, and collected. But when you can bring it as a team, when you're focused, you can. The numbers speak for themselves.
I think first quarter is the play tonight. Yep, and I just looked it up too. Like if you're a favorite in the game, the second game, in the first quarter, or if you were a favorite in both games, that's what I meant to say. If you were a favorite and you lost, and now you're a favorite again, 17-13 ATS in the first quarter, 18-8-4. So you're 70% straight up in the first quarter, and 57% ATS.
If you can get a minus 120, I like it.
Yeah.
Minus 130.
Yep.
I don't mind
Rockets first quarter is the play here for tonight. All right, let's preview AJ Hoffman's NCAA tournament bracket.
College basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every night. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into bigger wins with the College Basketball Parlay Profit Boost. Here's how it works. Build any college hoops parlay you like, the early tip, the rivalry game, the ranked matchup, the late night West Coast shootout, mixed spreads, totals, props, whatever fits your read of the slate. Then just apply your profit boost and instantly bump up that potential payout. Go safe, go spicy, go with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style. Now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com/believe to get started. FanDuel, play your game. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with the Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. Opt-in required. Minimum 2-leg parlay required. Bonus issued as a non-withdrawable boost builder tokens. Restrictions apply, including any token expiration and max wager amounts. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-MY-RESET. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. For Louisiana, call 1-877-770-7867.
Joining us now on this episode of Better Day to help us break down the brackets is our good friend AJ Hoffman, always on Twitter at AJIsTheReal, host of The Morning Huddle on San Antonio's Sports Star. And AJ, this is your time to shine. You've seen the brackets. You've had a couple of days to kind of digest and let things sink in. How comfortable are you right now looking at this bracket, knowing who you have in the Final Four and who you ultimately have as the national champion?
I feel I'll go 70 to 80% comfortable with my Final Four situation. There's one pod where I kind of hemmed and hawed on, and quite frankly, the East region, I wanted to find a different champion than the one that I found. I just couldn't. I do think though this season is a little bit unique in that, you know, you're going to hear a lot of, well, historically 3s versus 14s and 4s versus 13s. This, I think the NIL era is going to wipe all of those things clean, and the likelihood that there's going to be a bunch of upsets just seems very, very slim to me. So my bracket feels chalkier than it normally does. And that's even with me kind of forcing through a couple teams that I thought, oh, maybe this team could make an upset, make something happen here. But it's very difficult to find any type of Cinderella stories in this one. So outside of a couple of regions, I feel pretty solid about it. I feel very comfortable with who my champion is. I think I knew before the draw who I was going to pick to be the winner, and I feel pretty comfortable with them now.
So this was our process. Mackenzie and I on Sunday night / Monday morning, we filled out our gut bracket. We just went through everything, no analysis, no nothing. We didn't look at spreads really. We just kind of filled it out. And then I take that bracket, I fold it up, I put it in the drawer. I don't look at it again until tomorrow night, until Wednesday night, right? And then what I do is I talk to people like you, talk to everybody else. I do my research, do my analysis. I fill out another bracket, and then I take the two, I compare to see where my gut maybe differed from the analysis. And then on Thursday morning before round one, we have the final bracket that is submitted. One bracket to the contests. That's it. You don't get multiple brackets, but that's my process. So I'm curious who you have as a champion. Then we can kind of talk about who I put in my gut and who I'm leaning towards as we go through each region. So here's what I want to do. I want to go through the 4 regions, and we're going to kind of map out how you have the bracket playing out, AJ. But I also want you to give us one best bet from the first round of each region. Okay, and we'll use the spreads courtesy of our friends over at FanDuel. So let's start in the East region, and I'm not going in chronological order. I'm going in the bracket order. Okay, so we're gonna go down from one and then get down to the 2 seed as the last game, and then we'll talk about which first round game you are interested in betting, and then we'll talk about how you see the bracket shaping up. So in the East region, the 116 matchup, Duke against Siena, 8-9 Ohio State TCU. The 5-12 matchup, St. John's against Northern Iowa. The 4-13 Kansas against California Baptist. The 6-11 Louisville, South Florida. The 3-14 Michigan State against North Dakota State. The 7-10 UCLA and UCF. And the 2-15 UConn and Furman. Which one of those first round games do you have a best bet on?
I'm gonna go with Northern Iowa. Taking on St. John's, and I'll take the 10.5 points in that one. I think that St. John's is. I don't want to say they're overrated because I think as a 5, they're maybe even a little bit underseeded. But I think the gap between the Big East and mid majors like the Missouri Valley is a lot. That gap's a lot smaller than the gap between the Big East and, let's say, the Big 12 or the Big 10 or the SEC this year. The Big East was about as down as we've known it to be. So I'm looking at a St. John's team who, while they did finish the game really strong, finish the season really strong, we're not world beaters all season long. I think there's a narrative right now of, Rick Pitino sipping a beer at a press conference. He's on top of the world, winning in New York City. But this Northern Iowa team, while they did not win the regular season, as by the time the regular season ended, it was hard to argue that they weren't the best team in the Mo Valley, which is it's a 2-bid league, one bid less than the Big East got this year. These teams, Patino he's got a big team. They're not significantly bigger than Northern Iowa here. And I think Northern Iowa is going to be able to hang in this game just a little bit. I'm looking at a team that I think is overvalued by the market, especially the betting market. And again, the fact that they've gone from 9.5 at open and it's pushed up towards St. John's makes me feel pretty comfortable taking Northern Iowa here. So that'll be my best bet from round one is the UNI Panthers plus 10.5.
Well, it upsets me because in my gut bracket, I actually put St. John's in the Final Four.
I'm not saying Northern Iowa is going to win this game. In fact, that seems like a pretty long shot. But I do think that, again, the gap between what Northern Iowa is and what St. John's is just it doesn't feel congruent to me. So a double-digit spread here, I don't think is warranted.
Now, again, that's my gut bracket. That's not my final bracket.
You're a Northeast guy.
I might be a homer a little bit, but also it's fresh in my mind. The blowout of UConn in the Big East Championship game is fresh in my mind. When you play this bracket out, do you think we get to a UConn St. John's rematch, or do you have UConn losing to someone like, let's say, Michigan State before they get to the Elite Eight?
Well, I don't have St. John's in the Final Four because of Duke, and I was in fact, I don't have either one of those Big East teams in the Final Four.
You mean the Elite Eight?
Yeah, excuse me, in the Elite Eight. I was looking for a way to not have Duke in my Final Four, and unfortunately, this pod just didn't give me that. And part of it is I walked into this thing with a Big East, an anti-Big East bias this year. Okay. Which, by the way, I'm typically a Big East basketball fan. It was just, it was so bad this year, and it's inexplicable. Marquette and Creighton and Xavier and Butler and these teams that had been Seton Hall historically, at least in recent history, have been very strong teams were just bad. So I had an anti-Big East bias coming in. I had an anti-Kansas bias coming in, and I almost always have an anti-Michigan State bias. So it was very hard for me to find a team that I could see knocking off this Duke team, which is much better than I would like to admit. So for me, that's what it came down to. I have Duke and Michigan State in the final, and I have Duke headed to the dance or headed to the Final Four.
Okay. So no concerns over the injuries. You think Boozer's little brother stepped up and filled the role?
I think he did fine. And again, I think that Mbongo is gonna be back and healthy for this tournament. I think the rest of the injuries are likely to linger throughout this thing. But I do think that we saw a little bit more depth in it, and it turns out like point guard play doesn't seem to be that important for them with the way that they're built right now. So they showed some weaknesses, but again, in a region where I'm having a hard time finding another team that I want to back, even a hobbled Duke, an 85, 90% Duke is still my pick to come out of that region.
Yeah, and by the way, they're twins, right? So it's not like I don't know who was born first, but there you have it, the Cameron and Caden Boozer. Yeah, Caden Boozer stepped up as a nice injury replacement there for Duke. All right, so you have Duke representing the East region. Let's go to the South region, AJ. We have Florida against the, to be determined here, the 16th seed as we're recording this before the play-in round. 8-9 matchup, Clemson and Iowa. The 5-12, Vanderbilt against McNeese. The 4-13, Nebraska Troy. The 6-11, North Carolina VCU. 3-14, Illinois Penn. The 7-10 matchup, St. Mary's and Texas A&M. And the 2-15 matchup, Houston and Idaho. What's your best bet in the first round here?
I'm going to go with Virginia Commonwealth here. I went into this. I was impressed with VCU down the stretch. This is another example of a team that was playing their best ball at the end of the year. And North Carolina is just not the same team without Caleb Wilson. And I didn't think they were all that great with Caleb Wilson. I think they're very vulnerable without them. VCU played a couple ACC teams in this regular season. They beat Virginia Tech, beat them by almost 20 points, if I'm not mistaken. And they were down to the wire against North Carolina State. So they're not afraid to play up here. And VCU is going to be able to shoot some threes. North Carolina, pretty bad against the three, 216th nationally against three-point shooting. And VCU, a solid three-point shooting team. I think Terrence Hill, you got a playmaking point guard. I like the way that VCU matches up. And again, North Carolina was a team that I wanted to find a way to fade coming into the tournament. Just so happened that they went up against an 11 seed that I was hoping to be able to back, and just a perfect storm here. And I'm going to be a Ram in this one. So VCU plus 2.5, 3, if you can get it. I like VCU. I'll advance VCU through my bracket as well.
Yep, VCU plus 2.5 up on FanDuel right now over North Carolina in that 11-6 matchup in the South. I'm excited to see if we can get a Vanderbilt-Florida rematch in the Sweet 16, right? I'd love to see how Florida responds after that beatdown that occurred in the SEC tournament. But the more that I look at this bracket, it's like my first gut instinct was before the field was even set, AJ. I said it months ago. If Houston gets into the South region as a 1 seed or a 2 seed, they're going to the Final Four. The fact that the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 is going to be played a mile off of campus, you know more than anybody how much that fan base traveled 3 hours to San Antonio last year to go to the Final Four. Now they just have to walk to the arena. It's a place in the Toyota Center where they do play a regular season game there pretty much like every year, right? They've played there before, so they'll be familiar with the sightlines and whatnot. They played there earlier this season, and I just think being home is such an advantage for them that I can't see them losing in the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8, regardless of who they play. I have Houston in the Final Four.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I went into this expecting to have Florida as a Final Four team. I've been kind of tooting the horn of Florida as, I feel like they were kind of left out of the discussion of the best teams in the country for the last month or two. And everybody's talked about the big three of Arizona and Michigan and Duke. But I've thought Florida has been just as good as them. That Vanderbilt game was a little bit alarming, no doubt. And they got put in a region against two other teams that I've been kind of in love with all season long. Houston, though, they're I don't think they're as good as they were a year ago. But I don't know if that's what you need to be. I don't know if they need to be as good as they were a year ago to beat this Florida team, because I don't think this Florida team is as good as they were a year ago either. The other team I really liked in this region a month ago, and I would have probably said it was a Final Four team a month ago, is Illinois. They have everything that I'm looking for except for a coach that I trust. And the Brad Underwood it feels like every year I'm like, oh my God, this team is so great. And they've got so much talent because he's such a brilliant recruiter and a game planner. And then somehow every year his teams find a way to melt. and a team that's got a Jordan Wagler who's a a lottery pick and just loads of talent around him. I wanted to back this team. They just played so poorly down the stretch. It's hard for me to find a way that they're going to beat Houston and then beat Florida on top of that. Just feels like too much of a tall task for me. And for me, it came down to how the brackets shook out. That the Houston Cougars basically get to play their third and fourth round games, down the street from campus. It's a pretty unbelievable situation there. And I think also the fact that they get Florida in the Elite Eight, if it should come to that, is another big deal, another motivating factor for a Cougar squad that. I sat here in San Antonio and watched those guys crying on the podium after the game last year that they thought that they outplayed Florida for 36 minutes of that game, and they thought that the national championship was in their hands. I think that they get their chance at revenge here, and I think they get it just because of a lot of it is emotional, and a lot of it is, I think, having that home court edge. As far as the actual matchup on paper, if it comes to that, Florida's daunting. They're huge, and it's going to be hard for Houston to bully them. But Houston's got 3 starters that played in that game in the Alamo Dome last year, so I think they'll be ready to go. So give me the Cougs to make the Final Four out of that bracket as well.
It's a great point about the revenge angle, and I had Houston as well. It was my national champ last year, so. That one stung. It definitely stung for me. In fact, I think I've bet Houston to win the national championship the last 3 years in a row. But anyway, let's go to the Midwest region. Michigan in the 116 matchup. The 8-9 Georgia against St. Louis. The 5-12 Texas Tech Akron. The 4-13 Alabama Hofstra. 6-11 Tennessee against the winner of the play-in round. Again, we are recording this prior to the play-in games. The 3-14 Virginia against Wright State. The 7-10 Kentucky and Santa Clara. And the 2-15 Iowa State and Tennessee. What is your best bet in the first round here?
It's going to be Virginia, laying 18.5 against Wright State. And this just feels like a opportunity for a team to just blow somebody out. And I think Wright State, the way they are built, is pretty disastrous. Wright State is a very, very rim-reliant team. They want to get to the basket. They want to score easy stuff at the rim. You cannot do that against this Virginia team. They've got a 7-footer. They've got guys who are just built to keep you away from the rim, and you've got to be able to shoot threes to beat them. I don't see how that works. Maybe in their conference, Wright State is a big-ish team, but their biggest starter is 6'9". That is just, there's going to be no easy buckets for Wright State here. They're going to have to make their threes, and quite frankly, they don't shoot them. They this whole season they have gone and they shoot less than 33% of their shots from three, which is funny to say that it is now a low volume, and quite frankly, not a great percentage. So I just feel like Virginia is going to force Wright State into a game that they're really uncomfortable playing, and unlike teams of Virginia past, this is a team that can play fast. This is a team that is comfortable playing with some tempo, which means I'm less hesitant to give up margin or to think that they can get some margin here. So I like UVA coming off they almost beat Duke. Talk about teams that were playing well at the end of the season, and we just talked about Vanderbilt and how Vanderbilt finished the season, and they were really close to an SEC title. So you got to feel good about what they look like right now. I think Virginia's in the same boat. To have the run that they had in the ACC, I think they're confident right now and just got an ideal matchup against a team that really is going to have to play outside their box to have any shot here.
Yeah, this isn't your Tony Bennett's Virginia winning 58-49, right? In a low scoring game. Do you have anybody other than Michigan representing this region in the Final Four?
I do, actually.
Ooh,
yeah.
Okay.
I'm this is where I'm going off the beaten path with my bracket here. This is where I'm going to try, because in a year where I think, you're going to see a lot of 1s and 2s in people's Final Fours. Mm-hmm. And a lot of, when I fill out a bracket, there's a lot of game theory as to, okay, if everybody's picking these teams, I've got to find a way to find one team or, that I can, make some noise with. And I thought this was the region I could do it. So with Michigan, who we saw in the Big Ten, is vulnerable. This is they're not a super deep team. They're still missing. Kaysen was a big injury for them. You're still seeing some effects of that. So I looked for a team outside of Michigan, and then I looked at Iowa State, and I don't feel comfortable with Iowa State. I wanted somebody who had a little bit more high-end talent, and I ended up putting Texas Tech and Virginia both in my Elite Eight.
Wow.
So it just
even without Toppin.
Yeah, and I think people forget that Christian Anderson is a lottery pick, and this is a team in Texas Tech that shoots a ton of threes and makes a ton of threes, and that sure worked for Purdue against Michigan. A team on a hot shooting night can beat Michigan, and their path sort of opened up because at first I think they got a really comfortable first round matchup against Akron. Akron is a team that's built kind of like them, just with less talent. And then they likely have Alabama in round 2. And now Alabama's second leading scorer apparently is Tony Montana, so he's not going to be around. And again, I think Michigan is vulnerable there. So I was able to get Texas Tech through on that side, and on the other side of the bracket, I like that Virginia team. I think Virginia's built to make some noise here, and I'm going to trust that squad. And Virginia ends up being the team that I've gotten the Final Four out of this one. So
wow.
It's not like it's going crazy to have a 3 seed in my Final Four.
Yeah.
But that's where I go a little crazy in this one.
All right. Well, so far you have a 1, a 2, and a 3 in your Final Four, and I'm hoping that your next one's going to be a 1 because I've placed a bet already on over 1.5 1 seeds to make the Final Four. So here's what we have in the West region. The 116 Arizona against Long Island, the 8-9 Villanova Utah State, the 5-12 Wisconsin High Point, the 4-13 Arkansas Hawaii, 6-11 is BYU against the play-in winner, which I think could be the play-in winner that advances to the second round.
I agree with that.
It happens more than it happens almost every year. I have Texas winning and then Texas beating BYU. Again, we are recording this prior to the play-in game, so if NC State wins, maybe I'll put NC State over BYU.
I think both those teams could beat BYU, by the way. I think BYU is very dependent on one man. Is with their second best player being hurt as well. And DeBance has been a guy who's been a little bit of a roller coaster. So, I think both those teams can score with anybody and just suck on defense. If BYU has a bad shooting night, either one of those teams could make it through.
3-14 Gonzaga Kennesaw, the 7-10 Miami Mizzou, and the 2-15 Purdue Queens. What's your best bet in this first round besides the Texas NC State winner over BYU?
I'm going to go with Purdue's team total over here. We saw Purdue. Purdue is, if not the best, they're one of the 2 or 3 best offenses in the country. And they play fast. They're hard to match up with. They've got great shooters all around. It's not quite NBA talent, but it is really, really good college basketball talent, and it's senior laden. And I think Matt Painter is the kind of guy who, ever since that early upset, the first round ousting, we've seen him kind of change up his philosophy in these games, and I think he's going to keep the pedal on the gas the entire time. Queens defensively is just in trouble here. They've got no answers for this Purdue offense. I mean, Michigan didn't have answers for Purdue's offense. I have a hard time imagining Purdue doesn't run up a big number here. The team total is at 94.5, which sounds crazy. But I think this is a game where Purdue might score 100 points and really kind of follow up on that Big Ten championship and take that momentum and make a stamp, with their first round appearance here. I think they get a big crooked number up on the board.
Well, here's why I don't think the 94.5 is crazy, because I've heard some people say that they want to take the points here with Queens because Matt Painter showed in the Big Ten tournament, like he'll sit his starters at the end of the game, right? But what do we see all the time in basketball? When the starters come out and the backups come in, that's their time to shine. That might be these players' only opportunity to play here in the NCAA tournament. And when the backups come in, I always feel like it leads to overs because these kids just chuck up threes. And so I think we get a situation at the end of the game here in the final 5 minutes where Purdue's up 20 to 30, maybe 35 to 40 points. The backups come in, and all of a sudden it's a 3-point barrage, and they wind up putting up over 100 points. Yeah. So I think that's very likely to happen here.
Well,
against Queens.
If you look at what Queens did when they played against high-level competition this year, like high major competition, gave up 94 points to Villanova. They gave up 94 points to Virginia, 111 points to Wake Forest, 108 to Arkansas, 106 to Auburn. And these aren't even like a lot of those aren't even tournament teams. They're just power conference teams.
Yep.
And even Furman, they gave up 90 points to them. So this is a defense that I think is just going to have a hard time getting stops. And if you take a team that's bad defensively, which Queens is, they're 322nd KenPom defensive efficiency rating, and then you add that to a team that plays fast, which they also are. They're in the top 65 in tempo, and you put them against a team that's just way more talented. That is the ultimate recipe for big tournament blowouts, and that's what we've got here. It is a classic spot, so I'm going to go Purdue to run away from them here.
Well, in my gut bracket in this region, I do have the Elite Eight matchup between Gonzaga and Arizona, where I have the student beating the teacher and Tommy Lloyd and Arizona going to the Final Four. What do you have?
That's exactly what I have. I've got Arizona and Gonzaga, and the reason I came to Arizona and Gonzaga is as you look up and down this bracket and you look at Purdue, Arkansas, Wisconsin, you kind of just all the way through this thing. And I mentioned BYU. I mentioned the two teams that come out of that play-in game. There's one thing in common with all those teams besides Arizona and Gonzaga, and it's that they're all pretty questionable on defense. And Arizona's elite everywhere, but in a region where there's not a lot of teams that prioritize defense, and I see two in Gonzaga and Arizona that really do. Those are the two teams that I'm most interested in. I think their paths, are reasonable. That Gonzaga Purdue game would be phenomenal. I'd love to see it. But the good thing is, even if I'm wrong on Gonzaga beating Purdue, I think Arizona is a dreadful matchup for Purdue anyway. You're talking about an Arizona team that, quite frankly, Arizona has 4 NBA players, and the one guy that they have starting who isn't a likely NBA player, and he might be, is the Big 12 Player of the Year. Like they're just completely stacked. And when you look at Purdue and you see, for lack of a more graceful way to put it, you see a bunch of unathletic white guys. It looks like a team that would be playing at 24-hour fitness. To put them on the floor with Arizona just feels like it won't be much of a matchup. Arizona was the easiest for me to fill out. It was Arizona putting them in the Final Four was the easiest decision I had to make when I was coming up with my regional champs.
All right, AJ. So your bracket's Final Four, you have Arizona, Virginia as a 3 seed. How about that? You have Duke as a 1, Houston as a 2. You and I are aligned. I have Houston and Arizona in my Final Four. And in the gut bracket, again, this is not my final bracket because I still have to, finish the conversations and the research. But in my gut bracket, I do have Arizona and Houston in the national championship game, with Arizona beating Houston to win the national title. What does AJ Hoffman have in his Final Four?
I have Arizona over Duke for the national title, and I wish that I could pick Houston. I do. I love Kelvin Sampson. I love the team that he's got. But I just feel like there's something missing from them. They're not as good as they have been offensively. No. And typically that they're not always great on offense, so it doesn't really matter. But usually they are elite defensively. And this year they're really good defensively, but I don't think they're so great that their offense is just gonna. We'll worry about that when we have to. I do think they're a little more flawed than some past teams. And again, this was me coming from a perspective of trying to find a way to get Duke out of there. But at the end of the day, I just think they're the more complete team right now. And then, Virginia, again, whoever it is that comes out of that region, and I'm, again, trying to play a little game theory by putting Virginia in there. I don't really have anyone coming out of that region that I feel like is going to give Arizona any trouble. And because I feel most confident that Arizona is going to be in the championship game over all these other teams, it was easy for me, particularly in a bracket pool, to put Arizona through as the champion. Because if you said rank them by confidence, Arizona is my easy, 4-point confidence play. Yeah. Whereas, the rest I hemmed and hawed over all of them. I mean, if you want to say Florida beats Houston, I'm not going to argue with you. I mean, if that game were played literally anywhere else, I probably would have picked Florida to beat Houston. But I just, and again, Duke, I couldn't find a way to get them out of there, even though I wanted to. So it just came down to who's my most likely team to be playing in the championship game. So I'll take my chances with them cutting down the nets in Indianapolis. So give me the Arizona Wildcats. I guess the first team west of Baylor in 25 years or something like that.
Well, no, I mean Baylor is actually on whatever side of Texas they're on. They actually qualify as being on the east portion of the country.
So it's been forever. It's
been since 1997 Arizona.
Yeah.
So that's it. No team. I think it's no team west, and I guess Baylor, because it used to be no team west of the Mississippi.
Right.
But now it's no team west if you draw a line down the middle of the country, because I guess Baylor does qualify, right, for being in the eastern part of I guess the great state of Texas there. So it's no teams west since 1997 Arizona, and Arizona's going to do it here and break that streak up on FanDuel. Arizona, the second favorite to cut down the nets at plus 380. Plus 380, excuse me. AJ, great stuff as always, my friend. Looking forward to more contributions for you. Have a great tournament, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
All right, Scott. Good luck, brother.
Great stuff from AJ Hoffman. Mackenzie, it's always nice to hear from AJ, and hopefully we'll be hearing from him more, especially throughout the summer with the UFC cards, now with the big numbered events not being on pay-per-view and being on Paramount Plus this year. So AJ will hopefully hop on more and more after college basketball season's over. His schedule opens up more, so we'll be able to get more UFC content from AJ. Speaking of more content, how about Colby and Jake, who debuted the first episode of their new podcast, Off the Board, streaming live on the Better Day Twitter page and the Better Day YouTube page, as well as on the Better Day podcast feed. So if you're listening to this podcast on the Better Day podcast feed, you catch the episode, it's there. Shout out Colby and Jake, who they did their breakdown of the NCAA tournament bracket. They also gave out some Major League Baseball futures as well. And shout out Colby hitting his first bet for Better Day Insider and Premium members with the Venezuela team total going over 1.5 runs in the first 5 innings. They had a 2-0 lead after the 5 innings. So good job there from Colby. We'll get more Major League Baseball content from those guys as we move along here. And more announcements coming with more contributors and more insights and tools and things to help you guys become better bettors. Learn how to elevate your betting game by clicking on the home link on our homepage at betterday.com. For Mackenzie Rivers, I'm Scott Seidenberg. Here's hoping you make today and every day a better day.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.